do a quick weekly news for 5. We're in week 5. Because I've been getting a few texts on the case study, so I want to just kind of clear everything up on the case study. I know you guys are working so hard on it. I'm just excited that you're excited about the case studies. I uploaded a document discussing case studies. If you remember from general psychology, where they talked about all the different descriptive types of research, we could do case studies, surveys, interviews, but case studies are a brilliant learning strategy for students in abnormal psychology, because it allows us as professors and psychologists in the field to give you real examples of all the different disorders that we're going to talk about throughout the class. And I have found throughout my years of teaching abnormal psychology, which is, I think, since 1998, I've been teaching abnormal behavior, abnormal psych, that case studies have just been a brilliant way for students to even just practice a little bit in clinical questions. So with Margaret's our first case study. This is just a little excerpt of a interview. Interviews are important in the overall assessment. So I just have 2 clinical questions for Margaret. Why do we do an assessment? Like, what is the importance of that assessment? Now, you're gonna find that in the assessment chapter. The second question deals with that causation. When you look at Margaret, think about biological, psychological, and social cultural. In fact, I told my in class, take 3 highlighters and go through each of the case study. Margaret, now we're going to be on to the next one, and go through and read it, and then go back and look at everything biological, highlight it. Take another one, everything psychological, highlight it. Everything cultural, highlight it. That way you're getting you're putting together this picture. So I'm already kind of hitting into your answer, this kind of clinical picture of the problem with Margaret. And again, it's just kind of an introduction to case studies, and they're just, again, such a great learning strategy and tool to use in the field of abnormal psychology, because it gives you just a good example. I am not looking for any length. I think with the first question, a good paragraph, a paragraph is 5 to 8 questions, but just make sure you're putting in that content, like really think about why we do that assessment. Like, what are we really looking for when we do that assessment? And again, thinking clinical picture. And then in the second question, just kind of in paragraph form, according to this case study, Margaret presents some biological, issues, and her age. She's 48, so she's middle age, and she could be premenopausal. I mean, there's just certain biological things. And then according to the case study, psychologically, she's presenting, maybe some issues in the family. When did all her situation start? Well, it started around Christmas. Christmas is cultural. So it kind of gives you a timeline. So that's kind of what I'm looking for, just to kind of get you started. The next case study you're going to have is PTSD. And I do have, again, more clinical questions to the PTSD. But, worded that way, how would you write that psychological report? If somebody walked up and said, why do we do an interview with a patient? What could be some things that you could say back to that person? This is why we do an assessment. This is what we're looking for when we do an assessment. So think about just anybody walking up and asking you those questions, like how would you psychologically, make comments back to them? And so that's what I'm looking for with the case study. So work on that, work on Margaret, kind of gets you started, and go ahead and upload that back to the folder. And if I have any questions, I'll give you feedback. I'm going to give you feedback on Margaret, so that way you kind of have an idea for the next case study. I want you to do really well on these case studies. I want you to be able to take this practice of the kind of the clinical reports, and if you take another psych class, if you're at the upper levels, you're going to have that tool to go into those courses. So this is just really, really good practice. Okay, so I hope I've cleared up questions. Again, if you have any, just text me. Not a problem at all. Okay, bye.